Since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began 2.5 years ago, cameraman Jamie Wiseman and I have been reporting from the front lines. During this time, we've travelled more than 25,000 miles around this vast country. Whether it was riding in a pickup truck that was being hunted by an FPV, or leaving a position while under artillery fire, navigating the front line is the most dangerous task we face here. These are some of the moments we ran that risk, and how we survived. One of our most recent trips involved an 800-mile drive to Chasiv Yar. It's high summer in eastern Ukraine, and we're travelling to where the war with Russia could be lost or won. To where soldiers ride shotgun against kamikaze drones, where the shelling is heaviest, where in order to survive, life has to be lived underground. We have been given unprecedented access to the Ukrainian defence of the town of Chasiv Yar, where we're being hosted by 4 different brigades and a special reconnaissance unit. We first met some of these units in January this year, in the snow and sub-zero temperatures of the Kupiansk and Sloviansk front lines. In spring, these units were rushed south to Chasiv Yar to help prevent a tactical and strategic disaster. Now they're fighting for their lives in the blistering heat of high summer. In the months since we last met, 2 of the units lost more than half their men. The Russian casualties have been even worse. Jamie and I will travel into the shattered frontline city twice in 3 days. Neither trip is good for the nerves, given the constant attention of Russian drones and the additional threat of the artillery that is steadily destroying the city. Our first attempt to enter is disrupted before it begins. The Russians are firing thermobaric rockets into one of the districts we had planned to pass through. Chasiv Yar is on fire, we are told this morning. Later drone footage of the attack confirms this to be the case, so we will have to approach from another direction. We are with a special reconnaissance unit in a British-donated pickup truck. It's commanded by our old friend, the decorated veteran Lieutenant Oleg. He's equipped with 2 pieces of kit that might, just might, help protect us against kamikaze strikes. The first is a drone detector, a little black box with 2 antennae, which fits in the palm of his hand. It can pick up the electronic signals of UAVs flying within a 10-kilometer radius. The frequency of the radio signal identifies the type of drone, while the strength of the signal suggests its proximity to the box, to us. The second is a Magnum pump-action shotgun, the barrel of which is now jutting skywards out of the window. Oleg looks a little like the guard on the Deadwood stagecoach. This is not comforting. His Magnum is a weapon of last resort against kamikaze drones. It's a little like clay pigeon shooting, except the clays are coming right at you, and will kill you if you miss. The reconnaissance soldiers are more relaxed than we are. In the background, Miley Cyrus is singing Flowers on the truck's radio. We cross a railway line and accelerate towards the city. This is a dangerously straight and exposed stretch of road. You cannot hear it for the noise of the slipstream, but the drone detector has started its ominous warning beep. A Mavic drone, mostly used for surveillance, is somewhere nearby. We pull off the road, under what cover is available, and wait. The soldiers are concerned about the Mavic guiding in kamikazes. The outskirts of Chasiv Yar are very close now. We begin to smell the burning city. Finally, we reach the suburbs. We enter a residential district that has been badly damaged by shell fire.
5-10 minutes.
The drone threat here is very high. The crash and boom of artillery exchanges are constant. In this environment, no one moves in the open unless absolutely necessary. If you do move, then there is a chance you will attract unwelcome interest.
We're in Chasiv Yar, which is possibly the hottest spot on the Donbass front line. It's a crucial city, and if the Russians take this city, then many other towns and cities in Donbass are under threat, and they can launch a major breakthrough. A lot of artillery, which you may hear in the background. We were told when we came in that the city was on fire today because there'd been so much artillery. You can see behind me It's a big residential block, typical of Chasiv Yar, which has been badly damaged by the fighting and is now abandoned, empty, as every neighbourhood that we've been driving through at the moment. We can only stay here for a few minutes. We have drone detection devices. It's quite cloudy today, which is good, but there are still drones in the air, and it's a dangerous place to be.
We've stayed here long enough. The soldiers are concerned that we will be spotted. It's time to move on.
Саня! Саня! Давай, иди сюда! Поехали!
This is tense. The Russians rule the skies.
Давай, поехали налево, там еще хорошая туда. Да, там защита деревьев нормальная. В прошлом веке там дом начали строить. Я эту дорогу уже помню.
Yeah.
You can see the extent of the damage done to this residential district of Chasiv Yar. A lot of artillery going off today. We passed through a district that was under bombardment this morning. This looks like it was hit some time ago, but if there was anybody here, it would have been very serious for them. Chasiv Yar is pretty much deserted now. There were a few hundred people left when we came here in the spring of last year, but very, very few people here, and it's now being bitterly fought over by the Ukrainian army, which still holds the majority of it, and the Russians who are probing into it and are making attacks every day. In a nearby park, a statue of the Russian-born Soviet-era writer Maxim Gorky has been chopped in two. Whether this was done by the Ukrainians or Russian artillery, it's now impossible to say. But it's time to run the drone gauntlet again and escape Chasiv Yar. But we will be back. In June, we travelled to Ukraine's Little Apple, the Donbass town of Niu-York, hours before the Russians launched the brutal air and ground assault that would lead to its partial capture. This is what happened as we drove there, under the threat of kamikaze drones. It's 6:15 on a midsummer morning, and we're speeding east into the rising sun, with a Ukrainian Special Reconnaissance Unit, towards a small city in Donetsk Oblast that shares its name with America's Big Apple. The soundtrack to our New York journey is not provided by Sinatra, but the frantic warning beeps of a little black box. The sky is clear, save for a three-quarter moon, and the Russian target acquisition drone that is closing in on our vehicles. We're a mouse under a hawk. My palms are sweating. Situated no more than 2 miles from no man's land, with Russian drones and artillery scouring the city and surrounding countryside, New York has become a very dangerous place to visit. With only a few hundred of the 10,000 pre-war population left here, perhaps we will be the last Western journalists to see the town as it is right now. The Russians are attempting to take the larger town of Toretsk, only 5 miles to the north. Within a month, New York will likely have been flattened like Bakhmut, we are told by our military escort. That could prove to be a conservative estimate, as you will witness in this episode. It seems that we're here to see what life in New York looks like, on the verge of Armageddon. Our reconnaissance patrol is commanded by Lieutenant Oleg. The last time Oleg took a patrol to New York, his pickup truck was hit by 2 kamikaze drones. We will explain later what happened to him. On that occasion, Oleg was not equipped with an electronic drone detector, which could have given him enough warning to take cover. On this return to New York, an important precaution is taken. The long drive into the Frontline drone zone is nerve-wracking. There is little cover, no one else on the road, and as we make the final approach to New York, our 2 vehicle convoy is picked up by a Russian drone. The drone alarm will not stop beeping until we are well on our way back to base. We reach the outskirts of New York. No sign of life yet. We soon find out that the New Yorkers who are left are reluctant to speak to us. We spot two ladies, one carrying a large bunch of white hydrangeas. Oleg tries to talk to them, but they tell him they don't have time. It's the first sign that people in New York are scared. Another man refuses. We reach this New York's equivalent of Manhattan's Central Park. We hear small arms fire, which is probably the sound of soldiers trying to shoot down the loitering Russian drone that has dogged us during our visit. It's time for the patrol to leave. The drone alarm has not ceased beeping the whole time we've been here, nor has the sound of artillery, both outgoing and incoming. We're back in the country lane that will take us to the main highway. The drone alarm is ever more frantic. Then it tells us what we don't want to hear. The protocol in these situations is straightforward. If we are the target of a kamikaze drone, the driver steers into the nearest hedge or tree line. We bail out and scatter. But the kamikaze doesn't get any closer. We reach the empty highway and turn for home, still 20 kilometers without cover away. Shamefully, I'm grateful when a military vehicle passes us going the other way. Better they are targets than us. In winter, the danger doesn't just come from artillery and drones. Sub-zero temperatures and the constant threat of frostbite add yet another layer of hardship for soldiers on the front line. While travelling near Kharkiv earlier this year, we experienced these brutal conditions firsthand.
For the last few days it's been very, very cold, minus 20 and falling. And in fact last night here it was too cold to sleep. But the rain came this morning. As you can see, there is a serious thaw going on. And of course that presents new challenges for the soldiers who are having to fight the war here.
On the Kupiansk front, ice becomes slush and mud, creating another kind of misery for those fighting the war here. Yet within hours, the rain stops, the temperature plummets, and the slush turns back to ice. As the temperatures remain far below zero, frostbite and pneumonia cases have also begun to appear on the casualty lists. But whatever the conditions, the military activity does not stop. Hundreds of newly cut pine trunks have been piled here by army engineers. The timber will be used to strengthen Ukrainian trenches and dugouts. In other words, defensive rather than offensive positions. Kupiansk city is an unhappy place of damaged buildings and foreboding of what is still to come. It has already changed hands twice in this war. Something like normal life carries on, but the streets are largely empty and the city remains under threat from artillery strikes and a new Russian ground offensive. The front line is very close. All the road and rail bridges over the Oskil River have been destroyed. This bridge used to carry the railway to Luhansk. There is one pedestrian crossing left.
This is the partially destroyed bridge over the Oskil River in the centre of Kupiansk. 5 miles, approximately 5 miles beyond this bridge is the front line.
Nowhere is safe here. A sign at this petrol station, within range of Russian artillery and drones, warns that no more than 4 cars should stop on the forecourt at any one time. It is a prime target. Behind those sandbags is a very brave female cashier. In other circumstances, this would be the perfect winter's day for a walk in the woods. The temperature is a little below zero, the sky a faultless blue, the snow crisp underfoot. But these details are incidental to the crash and boom of artillery fire, both incoming and outgoing. Two Ukrainian soldiers in white camouflage overalls have stepped from among the trees to meet us. We must move quickly and keep under cover, they say, because the conditions today are also ideal for drone warfare, and the Russian front line is well within range. Indeed, the Russian border is only 25 miles away. This is the Kupiansk forest in the Kharkiv Oblast of northeastern Ukraine. From their camouflage positions inside the forests on the eastern bank of the Oxil River, the 41st Brigade's artillerymen are tasked with blunting any attempted Russian breakthrough.
During only one day, the Ukrainian defense forces in the...
They have been kept busy. Here, a self-propelled howitzer of the 41st goes into action. And of course, the Russians fire back, though not usually something as big as this, which is powerful enough to take down an apartment building.
So this is the motor part of an S-300 anti-aircraft missile, which the Russians had adapted to be a surface-to-surface missile, which was launched and fell into the Kupiansk forest a few months ago, probably without exploding, but there are bits of it littered across the forest near the artillerymen. It's become a local landmark.
Theirs is a deadly game of forest hide-and-seek. There is considerable nervousness here that our arrival and presence might be noticed by the Russians. Our film will be censored to make sure that nothing gives away the position. A major attack is expected any day now, but Sasha remains one of life's optimists.
When we meet again, I hope we'll be a little further east.
I wish him luck.
Everything will be fine.
It is not a sentiment widely offered by many on this frozen front line in these difficult times for Ukraine. Dawn over Dnipro, after a night of hypersonic missile attacks. It's so cold that the Dnieper River, a mile wide at certain points, has frozen over. The temperature is falling again, towards a predicted minus 21 degrees centigrade, as the last leg of our journey to the Eastern Front begins. It takes us through a vast flat snowscape, broken only by the outline of trees, occasional car wrecks, and halts for military checkpoints. In the distance, one of the Donbass coalfields' slag heaps looks like an iceberg in a polar sea. We reached the little Donetsk town of Kurakhove. At Christmas, following a long and devastating siege, the Russians captured Marienka, only 20 minutes' drive from here. Many observers believe Kurakhove will be the next target in the Russian line of advance. As we arrive, it's under Russian rocket artillery fire. Most residents have left. The only civilian to be seen in the main street is a drunk, shouting at passing military traffic. By September, the Russians had advanced to within mortar range of the center of Kurakhove. It's under severe threat of encirclement and capture this autumn. Travelling along the front line is one of the most dangerous undertakings, with soft-skinned vehicles like pickup trucks, constantly exposed to surveillance and attack drones from both sides. Earlier this year, our old friend Oleg became a victim of a Russian kamikaze drone. This is his story. What you're watching is the aftermath of a kamikaze drone strike on a Ukrainian army pickup truck. The soldier filming this on GoPro is our old friend, Oleg. He and his colleague were sitting in the Mitsubishi when the first drone hit it. Moments later, the vehicle was struck by a second drone. Astonishingly, both men survived the attack unscathed. And the incident would provide a further incredible twist, as we will see. We first met Oleg the day after he was released from hospital, having lost part of his ear to shrapnel. He took us to the town of Chasiv Yar near Bakhmut, which was under shell fire at the time. As you can see, he led the way in his trademark ride, a 4x4 pickup. Such vehicles are rugged and reliable, ideal for his kind of military work. But they're also soft-skinned and vulnerable to any kind of gun or shell fire, or FPV drone. One night last summer, we travelled in another of Oleg's pickups to a frontline position near Le Mans. The driver used night vision equipment rather than headlights, as we were so close to the Russian lines. This was when we had our first experience of the growing Russian drone threat. As we entered a trench line, an enemy drone could be heard hovering directly overhead. following morning, as we left the trench, Russian drones were out again, spotting for their artillery. Oleg had hidden his truck inside a thicket. For a horrible moment, we thought we would be stuck there. Since then, the threat posed by Russian FPV kamikaze drones has increased dramatically. They are changing the face of warfare. Not even a main battle tank is safe, let alone a pickup truck. But while driving in a vehicle, you cannot see or hear a drone approach, let alone one as fast as a kamikaze FPV. On the fateful day, Oleg was using a Mitsubishi L200. Like several of his other trucks, it had been donated from the UK and was a right-hand drive model. In Britain, Mitsubishi markets this pickup as being just at home on a surf beach as a construction site. What they don't say, because perhaps they don't know, is the L200 has an astounding ability to absorb battle damage, as Oleg was about to find out. Oleg and his colleague were driving in open country just behind the front line outside the occupied city of Gorlivka. This was asking for trouble. There was no cover and they were well within enemy drone range. Oleg said he did not see the first drone before it hit the roof over the rear cargo bed. The explosion blew off the hardtop and filled the cab with broken glass and shrapnel. Oleg and his colleague were both wearing body armor and helmets. That's what saved them. They bailed out of the truck in time to see the second kamikaze drone, just before it hit their rear bumper, here, and exploded. The two soldiers lay low for half an hour before approaching the wrecked Mitsubishi. They knew they were in serious trouble. Russian FPV drones can also target individual soldiers, and they were a long way from safety. What to do? Now, let's watch the video to its conclusion.
Давай, быстренько запрыгивай.
You can hear their heavy breathing and the stress in their voices as they examine the truck.
Да, я вижу ее.
The Mitsubishi is surrounded by its own debris.
Нет, дверь просто открою.
You can glimpse what remains of its yellow UK rear number plate. But despite the damage, and to their surprise, the engine still turns over.
Пробуй. Давай. Все, прыгаем. Давай.
And, even more miraculously, the Mitsubishi that had been hit twice by attack drones could still be driven away, out of the kill zone. In fact, they drove the wreck almost 30 kilometers before stopping. It was then put on a trailer and taken to their depot far behind the front line, where the possibility of repair is now being assessed. It's also the subject of some wonder, as the truck that wouldn't die. And Oleg? Lucky or unlucky, you decide. Given the battlefield supremacy of attack drones and how they've come to pose the most severe threat to vehicles travelling anywhere within 20 kilometres of the front line, I'd go with lucky.